Hayden Barnes posted something like this to protest the construction of a new parking garage on campus. And because of this, he was expelled from the university. This case turned into an 8-year legal battle, which ended with nearly $1 million payout. Let's unpack this case today. First, I will present you with the key facts of the case and then move on to my analysis. In 2007, Hayden Barnes was an environmental science student at Valdosta State University in Georgia. That spring, the university announced a plan to build a $30 million parking garage. Barnes opposed the project. He thought the new parking garage would be really bad for the environment because it would serve as a disincentive for students to use public transport. So, like many students would, he took his protest to Facebook. He posted a collage criticizing the garage plan. As I showed earlier, this is a reconstruction of that collage. And here, things took a drastic turn. Because in the collage he used the term Ronald Zaccari Memorial Parking Garage, the president of the university, Mr. Zaccari, characterized the post as a threat against his life. So, without any formal hearing, Barnes was administratively withdrawn. Practically, he was essentially expelled. He was locked out of his classes and his dorm. He was deemed a clear and present danger to the campus, according to the notification letter issued to him. In 2008, Mr. Barnes took the case to court. In his suit, he invoked the First and the 14th Amendments. With respect to his First Amendment rights, he argued that his protest collage was protected free speech. And invoking the 14th Amendment, he argued that he was expelled without any due process. There was no official hearing, he was not given any opportunity to explain and defend himself. The case moved slowly through the court system for years, starting in the U.S. District Court in 2010, then moving to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in 2012, and finally, petition was filed to the U.S. Supreme Court in 2014. Here are the key outcomes from this lengthy legal process. With regard to the 14th Amendment issue, Barnes clearly won. Both the District Court and the 11th Circuit Court ruled that his rights were violated when he was expelled without a hearing. The courts have indicated that before a university can impose the most severe sanction, expulsion, it must first provide the student with notice of the charges and a fair opportunity to be heard. In other words, even if administrators believe there is a potential threat, due process simply cannot be bypassed. The First Amendment freedom of speech issue did not receive a definitive ruling in this case, though. The First Amendment claim remained in play but was never fully resolved because the case ended in a settlement in 2015. In other words, the courts never directly answered whether Barnes' Facebook collage was constitutionally protected speech or not. They stopped just short, since the university settled before that question could be decided. With regard to the petition that was filed to the U.S. Supreme Court in 2014, the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, and that meant the 11th District Court's ruling stood as the final word, and the university had no further path to overturn it. In 2015, after years of back and forth in courts, the case ended when Barnes and the university reached a $900,000 settlement. This was not a punitive damages award handed down by a jury. Instead, it was a negotiated agreement to end the litigation. The payout covered compensation for the harm Mr. Barnes suffered, including the disruption to his education and emotional distress, as well as attorney's fees and legal costs that had accumulated over nearly 8 years. Importantly, the settlement also meant that some of the legal questions, like the First Amendment claim, were never fully decided. But in practical terms, this was still a huge victory. Mr. Barnes received financial compensation, the due process ruling in his favor remained intact, and one could argue that this was also a win for the university, as it avoided the risk of going to trial and potentially facing an even harsher judgment. So those were the key facts and outcomes of this case. Now moving on to my analysis, which is just my opinion. There are several points from this case that I think are noteworthy. First, this case shows the danger of overreaction. A collage criticizing a construction project was interpreted as a personal threat. Because the collager used the phrase memorial parking garage, the university president took it as implying death. In fairness, this was shortly after the Virginia Tech shooting in 2007, which left universities across America on edge about campus safety. So it is at least somewhat understandable that President Zaccari reacted sensitively, but the court made it clear, even in such a climate, administrators cannot skip procedures just because they subjectively feel threatened. When universities treat student activism as a security threat without evidence, it can spiral into rights violations. And this brings me to the second point. This case highlights due process and its importance. Courts ruled that Mr. Barnes was entitled to notice and a fair hearing, basic due process rights, before being thrown out. What is also striking is that at one point, the courts even allowed Mr. Barnes to sue President Zaccari personally, finding that he should have known better. Although Zaccari later regained immunity, the fact that this was even on the table shows just how egregious the violation was. Third, notice the contrast between this case with the Morosky case that we covered earlier. In that case, Morosky versus University of Delaware, the student won but only got $10 in damages. Here, Mr. Barnes got nearly $1 million. The difference? The due process violation was concrete and the harm to Mr. Barnes was severe, and the settlement reflected that. Whereas in the Delaware case, yes, the student's First Amendment rights were violated, the university was wrong, but there was no substantial harm done, so the $10 in damages were more symbolic, and this contrast is noteworthy. Finally, the lesson for universities is simple. Criticism, even sharp and uncomfortable criticism, is not necessarily the same as a threat. So be careful how you react to it. And if you are going to punish students for it, due process can never be skipped. So these are my thoughts and analysis on the case of Hayden Barnes. What do you think about this case? Do you think justice was indeed eventually served? I invite you to leave your thoughts and comments down below. On my channel, and specifically in this playlist, we're going to cover more cases involving academic misconduct, academic disputes and lawsuits, and other higher education controversies. If you find these topics interesting, please stay tuned. Thanks for watching this Ranywayz random video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.